In Episode 8, Adamo and Rashid talk to Lavelle Lemonier, host and creator of the Dadcast, a podcast designed to help people find themselves through creating awareness and through talking to one another. Today we ask Lavelle some hard-hitting questions for his insight. Enjoy the episode!
Hey there, folks, and welcome to today's show. We've got someone truly special to introduce to you. A man with many talents, genuine life experience and stories to tell. His name is Lavelle Lemonier. Now, Lavelle's no ordinary guy. At 56 years young, he's like a fine wine. You might know him as the witty host of the Dadcast Podcast, where he brings laughter, wisdom, and a whole lot of heart as he navigates the wild world that we live in called life. But there's more to Lavelle than meets the eye. He's not just the voice on the airways, he's a force to be reckoned with in the world of film and production, breaking barriers as an African-American trailblazer, from penning turning books to gracing the big silver screen with his acting chops. And he continues to write and produce and star in movies in the current time right now. And here's the kicker. Lavelle's not just about Hollywood glitz and glamour. Nope. He's about giving back to community, rolling up his sleeves and making a real difference. Whether it's advocating for positive change or lending a helping hand, he's there, leading by example with his boundless compassion and unwavering faith. But hey, before he became this legend he is today, Lavelle's journey had some pretty epic beginnings. A proud Army veteran, he learned the ropes of discipline and resilience from a young age. And let's not forget his early days dabbling in the arts, honing his craft in acting and writing dramas that set the stage for his incredible success. So grab your popcorn and let's get cozy, because today we're diving headfirst into the extraordinary life of Lavelle Lemonier. Get ready to be inspired, entertained, and maybe even a little bit awestruck as we chat with the one and only Lavelle Lemonier. Welcome.
Welcome, Lavelle. And obviously you have Rashid in the
cream of
studio.
The cream of the Middle East, Rashid. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lavelle.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. That intro sounds really good. I might like this guy that you're talking to.
We're so happy to have. We're so humbled to have you. We're branching out. We're two young guys. Well, not young, mid-40s, from a little place called Melbourne in Australia, and we've reached out to Lavelle, who he's from Texas, and he has this podcast called the Dadcast, which we stumbled across just a couple of weeks ago. And would you like to, tell us a little bit about your podcast and, what inspired you to do it?
Actually, my wife is the inspiration behind the podcast. She convinced me to start one. This was during the pandemic. I guess I was getting on her nerves or something at home, and she says I like to talk and I have stories to tell, so she suggested a podcast. And then we came up with the name The Dadcast because we thought it would be good to have a perspective of a dad on all these different subjects, regardless of what the subject might be. So that's the way it kind of started out during the pandemic. And the very first episode that we did was called Hustling in the Pandemic, where I was talking about the different types of little side jobs that you can do to earn money when most of the regular jobs were being shut down. But we've had some wild episodes. We talked about PMS and we called it Please Make It Stop.
So she has done herself a favor.
So that was the theme, obviously. So, COVID hit, you thought, let's do some side hustles, money. So that was the theme of your first series. Wow, I didn't actually look at your first series. I'm looking at your recent series. So then you progressed onto a second series, a second season as well?
Yeah, we moved through the second season. We're now, the sixth season is currently showing now. So we moved through, and I was traveling a lot, and decided one season was called I think we called it the um, Traveling with the Dadcast or something like that. It was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
travel edition. And I just met people randomly across the United States. And when I met someone interesting, I grabbed my camera out of my van and set it up and interviewed them. And it worked out really well. I met people from the East Coast to the West Coast of the United States. And then we went into we had a celebrity season where I interviewed celebrities from different
Yes, I saw that.
fields of work. And so it's just progress. This last season or this current season that we're in is really about mental health as the primary theme of season 6, and specifically mental health as it relates to men.
Well, that's interesting. I actually watched 2 of your episodes because I've been doing Rashid, when we're interviewing people, we have to do a bit of research. And I
Of
actually did
course.
quite a bit. I was on the couch and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Man, I've got the big Texan on tomorrow. Who's the big Texan?" I go, anyway, you have to listen to the episode.
That's
Anyway, I'm
right.
trying to this guy, he's got so much happening, so I need a format. So I actually listened to Jessica Rice's podcast, episode 5 on mindfulness. That was really eye-opening. That was fantastic. Then you had clinical psychologist Cynthia Campbell Palmer. I watched
Right.
snippets of that. Then you had Daryl Barrett. So, and all these themes are all about financial literacy, life coaching. Yeah, George Pitts on. So the theme looks like the theme that you're going with here is all about men's health, and you got professionals, more professional than us. Sorry, but that's the theme. And did you want to talk a little bit about a little bit more about this last season?
Yeah, so the very first episode of this season, there was a reality TV show here in the States that's called Ready to Love, and it's a dating show.
Wow.
And so I reached out to a guy who was on that show because he was unlike, and I've watched a lot of reality TV. So unlike some of the other shows, he was a guy on the show who stuck to his morals. He didn't want to degrade women. He didn't want to be perceived in a negative light. And so I reached out to him because I thought that was interesting. That doesn't normally happen on reality TV. And so
Okay.
we ended up having a good conversation about the relationship that he developed on the show and some of the things that took place. And then that led me to having a discussion with the financial literacy life coach, George Pitts.
Oh yes,
Um,
George. Yep. Episode 2.
and George had an interesting story because he's from Oklahoma and he had very meager beginnings and he was able to turn his life around financially. And now he's helping thousands of people learn financial literacy. So I thought that was very important, but I wanted to delve into the psyche behind it. Like, as a man, if you can't provide for your family, what does that do to you mentally? So it was that kind of discussion. And then that led me into thinking more about mental health because men, as you guys know, just don't express themselves clearly a lot. And we bottle it in, and then it comes out negatively in
Yeah.
relationships and family dynamics. And so I wanted to try to put the spotlight on that and see how we deal with mental health. What happens when we're feeling stressed and anxious and depressed? Who do we go to, and how do we express that without feeling like we're less than a man?
Wow.
And so that's the way the episodes after that, um, that's the way they develop. Now, tomorrow, Friday, here in the
Yep.
States, the next episode that comes out, I've got to plug it because this guy that I interviewed, I went to his home and interviewed him in California,
Yep.
and his child died of fentanyl poisoning,
Mm.
but the child was a trans child and a mixed race child. And
Wow. See.
so I wanted to understand how he felt as a parent and as a man to lose his child that way with all of those challenges that the child was facing, and how did he deal with that, and then also put the spotlight on fentanyl awareness. So that's going to be a very emotional episode. tomorrow that comes out, and then the final episode that we have the week after that is it's the finale edition where I'm bringing back all the guests for one final episode.
Well, I think I'm going to watch that one because he sounds like he's got the mixed race theme. Then he's got the gender equality theme as well. So, like, there's a lot of we haven't actually covered gender equality yet.
No,
Well, we've got
probably
something coming up. But well, that was a great insight, Lavelle.
How
we really
old was
appreciate
the
that.
child? Sorry, the kid.
I think 19.
19. Okay, yeah, it's the hardest thing, losing a child. I don't know how, as a parent, how can you go through that? Like mentally, it's very draining, isn't it?
Well, I haven't lost a child, but I know people who have, losing babies, prior to. So I don't even want to talk about it.
Honestly, it's an emotional thing. I don't know if I can go through that. I mean, I don't want to even go there. But anyways, let's get back to Lavelle.
Lavelle, thank you very much for that. The way that you just described that, with the mental health and your we really appreciate the way you made it clear for everyone. But let's just digress a little bit because, generally you're the one asking the questions. You always got these professionals on. And I have watched a couple of your episodes, and you do give insight as well so people can find out who you are. But we want to probably delve a little bit deeper.
Let's go.
Ask you a little,
Mate,
about your
upbringing. We've got a few questions for you.
About your upbringing, about influences, about religion. I mean, did you grow up? Let's talk about your upbringing. Was it happy? Was it sad? Was there a struggle? Was there
The origin story for me is that I was born in Southern California, and my biological mother was a drug addict. My biological father was a dope dealer, drug dealer. He also was the one of the security guards for Ike Turner, who was married to Tina Turner.
Oh my God.
And by the time, like, I got adopted young by family members. So the people who raised me lived in Texas and took me and two of my siblings to Texas and raised me. And that was the only parents I really knew. And at that point, I didn't even remember very much about um, Los Angeles. I didn't remember much because I was very young when they adopted me. And I didn't even realize I was adopted until I was 12 years old and happened to run across the papers in my parents' home in Texas. So then the trauma of learning my story hit me at 12 years old. And I had a lot of questions and I had a lot of anger and, just it made me deal with abandonment issues because I felt like, why did my parents didn't want us? We weren't good enough, those kind of things. It made me angry and very hot tempered. So I had to deal with all of those things. And but my life, as far as Texas and being raised by the parents who adopted me, was very good. My parents were from Louisiana, and they were very unlearned but very smart. They didn't have formal education. They were born in the 20s.
Okay.
And so reading and writing for them was not, my mother didn't read or write at all. My dad had a sixth grade education, but he was a business owner and made a good living for us. And learned a lot. I learned a lot about being a man and taking care of family, and um, it was a challenge, just because I didn't understand everything. The why questions. Why did I have to get adopted, and why couldn't I stay with my family in California, and why do I look different, and all these kinds of things.
Did you look
Um,
for your biological parents afterwards, or after learning you were
they
adopted?
were actually both, when I found out I was adopted, they were both dead.
Wow.
But I did connect with their with the
Elder.
siblings from
Mm.
my mother's side, my biological mother. So it was a big family, 16 kids that my biological grandparents had. So I was able to connect with uncles and aunts and cousins and siblings. And there were siblings I didn't even know I had until later on in life. And we had kind of a big reunion in 1999 where all 6 of us got together for the
Are
first
you still in
time.
touch with them? Are you?
You're still in touch.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
We appreciate you telling us that story. That was like a lot of people don't like to share, and we really appreciate that, Rashid.
You've turned out okay, mate.
It sounds like the new parents that raised you, they gave you this thing called love.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's all you need. And now coming from, is that where we're trying to piece it all together? Is that where your religious beliefs came in? Is that did they introduce you to church, or how does that work? How did that work?
They were Catholic, and I was raised Catholic. But I tell you what, the day that I graduated high school and joined the military, I immediately stopped being Catholic. uh, it just wasn't meeting my needs as an individual. But I didn't even consider myself religious or anything to that point. It wasn't until I was shipped off to Korea. I was 18 years old. I got out of boot camp. They sent me to the DMZ, right at the North Korean border. And a guy who was my roommate kept saying he was going to get out and be a preacher. And so he was pushing me. I was a boxer in the army,
Oh, well.
and we were training. And he would always say, "I want you to read this Bible scripture, read this and read that." And it's like I don't want to hear anything about this Bible stuff. Like doesn't a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. But I did it, and then that's where my faith journey began. I was introduced outside of Catholicism to the Christian faith,
Yes.
and those principles stuck with me because I really embraced the principles of Christian living. But I'm a student and I love learning, so I went to a Buddhist monastery while I was in Korea. I've read the Quran from front to back.
Maybe I can
I've
convert you, mate.
He's read the Quran.
I've read, I've always been interested in religions. I've read about Christianity, I've read books, and I know the principles, obviously, Islam and Judaism and Hinduism. It's quite interesting, isn't it? The, beliefs. And one day we can have that debate with Lavelle, it's going to come,
A discussion.
a discussion.
I'll tell you what, I want to have a podcast episode where I have a Christian minister, a Buddhist monk, a
And
Hindu
some-
priest,
Yeah.
and a Muslim minister. I want all of them on one podcast to discuss, because really, while there are differences, there are a lot of similarities.
Trust me, that all the
Especially,
principles are the same. Sorry.
yeah, yeah,
To me, it is the message has always been the same. The messengers have changed over the centuries, and because if you look at the 10 Commandments, it's still thou shalt not kill, and basically religion is good. It's like sometimes obviously there's a lot of misconception about Muslims, this and that. I'm like, don't judge Muslims by what you see. Look at Islam as a whole, as a religion, because people judge Islam based on what Muslims do. I mean, like, for example, Adam, you don't represent all Christians, do you?
Look, I'm not a very look. I believe in a few things. Jesus, the cross. I believe in a few things. Do I have a relationship with God? No.
Yeah.
Do I practice weekly? No. There are aspects that I've got my own beliefs over time.
Yeah.
More based around believing in myself. I'm probably more into Buddhism.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But
it is what it is.
But yeah, look, we're all in our journey. Look, going on from the the religion, obviously, So you've got this artistic side. So did you sing in church? Because you said you were in a choir. How does that? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, even when I was in the Catholic church growing up, I sang in the choir there. I sang in the choir in school all throughout my formative years. And then as I gotten older, when I was in the military, I was in the choir. When I got out of the military, I was in at a big church called Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, with Joel Osteen is the pastor there, and so I was in the choir there where we got to travel quite a bit. Um, Music has always been a part of my life, just like the arts have, and faith has been. I mean, I just appreciate music of all genres. I remember in the 70s and 80s, I would love to listen to rock bands, and then I loved R&B bands, and then I loved soul bands and jazz bands, and so
So
it's
you would love
really.
Quincy Jones. Was he a big, probably, was he a role model of yours? Quincy Jones?
I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he was a role model, but I definitely liked the music that he produced. Um, as far as music goes, I would probably say Prince,
Prince.
the artist, was my biggest influence because I love the musicality that he
Yeah.
showed. He could
Oh,
play so many instruments and he could sing so well and he could entertain, and he was just an expert at music.
How
So that's
great, sorry to interrupt, how great would it have been if Prince had have showed up on the night they did the recording of We Are the World? Because he
oh
didn't
yeah.
turn up. So I watched the documentary last week and they were all waiting because he was the big draw card. You know, they're all there. Bob Dylan, you know, Bruce Springsteen, Cyndi Lauper, um, and uh, and they're all waiting for Prince. And Prince, he wanted a guitar solo. He goes, "I'm only coming if I play a guitar solo," and he just didn't go. So that would have just look. It changed the world. That song, "We Are the World."
Yeah.
It was ahead of its time. But sorry to digress there, but I just thought,
Yeah, you get
No,
all
that
excited with music.
yeah, that would have been epic. It's just interesting to me how these music artists can influence the entire globe. I mean,
uh,
you think of somebody like Paul McCartney and the Beatles, and
yeah,
then you
yeah.
think of someone like Prince, and they're just music is a language that everybody can understand.
And going on from this artistic side, I want to talk a little, Rashid. This gentleman here, the more you read about him, the more that you just discover. So you had this artistic side early. So tell me about you used to write plays at an early age. You're an author as well. Now I was reading here that in 2005 you wrote a romantic novel.
Yeah, it was a romance novel that was a bestseller. Um, During that time, and it was, you know, I've always been a writer since I was in school. I would write poetry and then write speeches. When I was in the sixth grade, my sixth grade school teacher had me so my birthday is August the 28th, and Martin Luther King was assassinated on August the 28th.
1960.
And um my sixth grade teacher had me to recite the I Have a Dream speech for our school. And, it was my first time up on the stage. And something came over me that just delivered that speech as if he embodied me or something. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a classmate of mine just recently, and she was saying that, nobody in the sixth grade should have been able to do that. And it was just something that I couldn't explain. And that's where I fell in love with performing and writing, and just those things. That moment on stage just changed everything for me.
And with that name, Lavelle Lemonier,
Destined
I
for
reckon
stardom.
that's
Destined
right.
for stardom.
And with that name, you would have charmed a few women, huh?
If I could speak French a little better, maybe I'd do better. If I could say, "Comment ça va? Ça
Oh,
va
there you
bien? Toi, je
go.
m'appelle Lavelle
Oh,
Joseph Lemonier."
Vous êtes très jolie. That's all I know. Vous êtes très jolie.
Yeah, that's it. I don't even know what
You
it
look
means.
beautiful.
Yeah. There you go, mate.
Well, so you've had and going on from the books. I don't know. I wanted to ask about this, if this is a more recent thing or it's been in your earlier days. But so you're in film producing. You got your own production company, and you've made short films. You've actually got a film out at the moment called A Very Bayou Holiday, which is on Amazon and YouTube. I watched it a little bit last night.
I did too.
So tell me about this film stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, so it's a natural evolution from when I wrote plays in the '90s. I was writing stage plays and then writing books. It's just a natural evolution to write screenplays. And my writing partner and I wrote A Very Bayou Holiday, and we put together a really good script and a good story that everybody can relate to. And that's kind of what we do. We write in all genres. We have a psychological thriller that's based at the Vatican. We've got a romantic comedy that we're working on getting produced right now, that's just a kind of a fun romantic comedy. um, so different genres of writing that we do, just something that everybody can relate to.
And are these movies funded by your community, or how are they funded?
First, that A Very Bayou Holiday was funded independently by my business partner and I. The rest of the films that we have in the pipeline are more mainstream. So we're in discussions right now. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting today with a finance group because the budgets are pretty big,
You have to pay
multi-million dollar
people.
budgets. So
Wow.
Well, so yeah, I was just having a look at all the movies you got under construction. You got The Broken Trust, which is a thriller. You got one called Six, which is a sci-fi superhero drama. So I've done my research, Lavelle. Sorry, The Summer
that.
in Watch Hill, which is a dramedy, which is drama comedy, and you got the Red Cup Murders. So how are you finding time to do all these? Are they like, you must be up to your eyeballs in work?
I mean, I stay busy, but I enjoy it. This is, a labor of love. So um, it's easy because I enjoy doing it. And we spend a lot of hours writing and talking back and forth about the scripts. And I spend a lot of time on the business side of it, trying to connect with financiers and with distributors and um, other actors. We're trying to shoot for A-list actors for the next film. Um, so just it never stops, but it's something I enjoy.
Lavelle, if you need a couple of Latin lovers, right, for some love scenes, or
No, I'm not doing it.
And you don't have to pay us. We'd be more than happy to fill in and as many takes as possible. No, I'm joking. Sorry.
Make sure that those Latin lovers are straight.
No, in this day and age, it's all.
I'm just kidding.
You can be who you want.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with anything. I'm just saying.
You can be who you want. It's a matter of choice.
Yeah, we're just mucking around.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Mate, we're going to stay tuned with all your movie ideas, because I think this space is growing and I think it's all happening right now. So look, to move on from that, let's talk about the military. Now, I know we can't ask you personal questions about places you went and things that happened, like any specifics, but did you, and I'm sorry to change the mood, it's a little bit, I know you've got a few questions about the military, but my question to you is, and you don't have to give specifics in that, but first question is, how long, when you're on deployment, did you see any things that
you shouldn't have seen,
like death or fighting and stuff?
Yeah, I've seen what I would consider the worst of humanity and the best of humanity. Um,
I've seen.
there's something about war that just makes the worst of people come out. Um, and people are desperate. And when people are desperate, they do things that aren't rational. And
And
so,
you
go ahead.
consider yourself religious. Can I ask are you born again Christian now, Lavelle? Are you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So you've always you started becoming more religious during when you were a soldier. You know, when you were deployed to South Korea. Is that what you said? South Korea?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So don't you think that your faith would have come into question when you went overseas, when you were deployed overseas, and you had to shoot at an enemy that you didn't know? And did you feel a bit, you know, in war, at war with your faith? That
At the
I'm
time I
just like that.
didn't. I was when you're in the military, you are mentally indoctrinated to follow orders. And if you don't, then you're not a good soldier and you're probably not going to last. And there's really not a lot of room for um, thinking, for lack of a better term. I mean, you do what you're ordered to do. Now, in hindsight, of course, my as my faith grew, then my perspective changed. But it's just one of those things where an enemy is an enemy, and you do what you have to do. Does it feel good? No, it absolutely doesn't feel good. But then you move on to the next mission. There's not a lot of time to just sit back and contemplate.
How long
Uh,
did you spend in Afghanistan? Sorry.
just a year there.
Okay. So looking back, do you think that you wish you had done things differently? You wish you had, I don't know, you hadn't been a soldier, or you're proud of what you've done or what you did or what you've been?
I'm proud of being a soldier. I'm proud of serving my country.
Yep.
Not proud of everything I did while I was a soldier, because there's so many politics involved in being in the military. So many of the decisions that are made in Washington D.C. They're made at the Pentagon somewhere. They're not made on the battlefield, and so we're out there trying to survive. Um, and so yeah, in hindsight, I wish things could have been differently, but I also wish that policies could change. I wish that
Mm.
politicians had to serve in the military, or else you couldn't be a politician. And I think that the president of the United States should not be commander in chief if they've never served in the military. That's just my opinion, because I don't know how can you manage a military, one of the largest military forces in the world, and you've never been in the military.
And don't you feel a bit betrayed that after spending probably 20 years, the longest war, America's longest war, right, in Afghanistan, and I don't know, after thousands of lives were lost, and after spending apparently America spent $2.5 trillion in Afghanistan, and eventually Taliban took over. And don't you feel a bit betrayed by your government, by the policies of your government? Don't. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that?
I just think that policies and politics are not well aligned with military service. I think that decisions are made not because of military or strategic decisions. They're made because of political reasons. They're made because there are lobbyists who want to see certain laws passed. They're made because there are pharmaceutical companies who dictate what lawmakers are going to do. And so, in my estimation, um, policies should be made based on humanity, not on political structures.
And does it make you
Um,
angry sometimes?
I mean, I get angry when I think about things like, um, it's the common thought is like, that's not even our war. Why are we there? It's not our war to fight. So those kind of things make me angry because we're losing the lives of young people. You got to think about it. When a soldier goes in the military, typically they're 18 years old. They're not even old enough to drink.
That's right.
Um, and you go in and your life is literally on the line for a cause, excuse me, for a cause that you are not even aware of. Um, and so some family, has to bring a body home from overseas over something that maybe wasn't necessary. So those are the things that make me angry, that we're losing lives. And that's not just for American military. When I was stationed overseas, I was stationed with soldiers from the United Armed Forces. So they came from different countries. And so everybody can relate to that. Every person who has had somebody in the military in any country can think about the possibility of that person never coming home. And
Wow.
so, um, unfortunately, we just don't make decisions based on what makes sense. We make decisions based on the pressure that's put on decision makers.
So, which leads me to the next question, which is like two questions in one. Did you lose some close friends? And if you did, coming out of the army and deployment, how were you mentally?
Yeah, I did lose one close friend. There was a guy. He was now. This is interesting because he was a white guy from Los Angeles who, when I grew up, um, having friends of different races wasn't really a thing in my community. It
Okay.
was blacks had black friends, white has white friends. We had a few, but it just wasn't widespread.
Yeah.
And so this guy was. We found out that we were born on the same day, the same year, in the same hospital in California, and we weren't overseas very long, and he was killed in combat. We called him Light Bulb. He had some really big ears that stood out, and so he looked like a light bulb to us. And he was unfortunately killed in combat, and
Sorry.
that was difficult to deal with. Even after I got out, there were some of my unit that had gotten called back, and some of them didn't make it back. So it's difficult. Every year, like Veterans Day comes around or Memorial Day, and I'm always making posts. If you go back on my Facebook posts, you'll see that I'm saying to people that you don't say Happy Memorial Day, because there's nothing happy about Memorial Day. Um, it's somber. I mean, people have lost their lives, given their lives, um, for freedom across the globe. And I think we have to respect that. I think that there are good and bad people in every single corner of this globe. And we can't, as Rashid was saying earlier, we can't judge people based on a generality. You have to get to know people and make a judgment individually.
That's right.
Um, and I think that's necessary. So yeah, it was difficult for me. I still suffer with PTSD to this day, to be honest with you.
And,
Um,
sorry, Lavelle, have you got children?
I do. I do have children. I've got a son and a daughter from my first marriage, and then I have two. We call them bonus children, um, but they're like my own, and so it's total of two boys and two girls.
How old are they, the eldest?
The eldest is 32. The youngest is 24. She just
He's not
turned
in military.
24.
Sorry. He's not in
Uh,
military. He's not a soldier.
no, no, no. None
Would
of
you want
them
him
wanted
to become a
to.
soldier? Sorry,
Yes and no.
you don't have to
Yes,
answer
yes,
that question.
because of I hesitate because yes, because of the the benefits that you can have from serving in the US military, but no, because of the danger that's associated with it, the uncertainty that's associated with it. Um, and one of the things that is just it's the elephant in the room many times is that people who are minorities in their country typically go in the military, give their life for freedom, and then go home and get treated as less than a human in many cases. And we've got to change that. We've got to talk about equity for people. I know people say equality all the time, but I'm more about equity, that we need equity across the board, and that people who serve their country should be afforded certain privileges and respect um, for volunteering to serve their country.
Very,
I
very
agree.
powerful. Very powerful. Thank you. Like, we really appreciate you sharing that insight.
Thanks, Lavelle.
And we know that it's a very touchy subject, and I'm not sure how much you've spoken about this on your program, about what you're like. I haven't watched enough of your previous stuff to know what you've shared, but for us, that gives us a great insight, and your opinion and personal experience. I mean, we've never fought. I fight with my wife now and then, but that's the only fighting.
Lavelle, I grew up in overseas. I was raised in overseas in Afghanistan. I come from a city, you might be familiar with the name, from Mazar-e-Sharif. I'm from the north.
Yeah.
I grew up, when I left the country, I was 17. So I came to Australia in 2003. I would have been, 19? So, I've experienced some, sometimes, our previous episodes are about war, and I spent a bit of time under Taliban's regime and saw some, I can't even talk about it, there's executions and murders, and call them murders.
But we've heard about that.
Anyways, we're not going to talk
in
about
the early
that.
episodes. If you want to hear about Rashid's.
Anyways, Lavelle, I was going to ask you about, how you mentioned that, you had a friend, he was a white man,
So we're talking about racism now.
Racism now, okay, yes.
Okay. Well, now, before we start and talk about, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
This comes, the way we talk about this now, because we're from a different part of the world. Lavelle's from a different part of the world. If you've just tuned in, doing this podcast, we're speaking to Lavelle from Texas, and we're talking about racism. So if we ask some questions now, have a bit of a discussion. Sometimes it might come out a little bit like we're saying the wrong stuff, but it all comes from a good place.
Please correct us if we are
if we say things
politically incorrect.
Yeah. So we might say things that we just don't understand enough, but we have done a bit of research. So sorry, I just needed to do that disclaimer.
Yes. Okay. Lavelle, obviously in America, you have white people, black people. Here we say African appearance or Caucasian. We have to use the correct term. And you said, how do I want me to address the race? Can I say black people or can I say African Americans? Because I don't want to be offensive, obviously.
He's American.
In
he's American.
I know you are American.
Hang on a second. I was born here, yeah? I'm an Aussie.
I'm an Aussie too.
Yeah, but I look like a what?
Don't sound like one.
I look like he's American.
Yeah, he's no. But in terms of, I was going to explain a situation. That's why
about his people. About
how would you like me to address it?
I personally don't differentiate between African American and black, because historically, every person of color or people that we consider black people didn't necessarily originate from Africa. Now we know that there's a great bit of historical evidence to show that Africa probably is the beginning of humanity in most cases. But whether you say African American or black or whatever, it's not offensive to me. It's not offensive to people that I know. Okay. It's a term that you can interchange.
Yeah. So okay, thanks Lavelle for clarifying that. So you're referring to your friend. He was a white man, so I suppose my question was that we hear on we see it all the time on American movies, and And why is racism so prominent in America after 400 years of, like obviously the African Americans, their history started probably about 400 years.
Yeah.
That
500 years.
yeah, that's a long time. So why is it so prominent, and why do we hear that all the time? And you, as an African American, have you experienced racism?
Yeah, I definitely have. And to go back to the early part of your question, um, while there's 400 years of history of Africans being on the North American, in North America in the United States, it wasn't that far back that that blacks or African Americans were not even considered full citizens. So if we go back to the 1960s in the United States, there was a whole civil rights movement that was trying to give black people the same rights that other Americans had. And this was even when those same blacks were able to serve in the military in the Vietnam War or the Korean War, and then come back to a country that did not even recognize them with all of the rights that belong to citizens of that country.
Oh, yeah. Obviously
So
led by Martin Luther King. Yep.
yeah, Martin
I like
Luther
Malcolm
King,
X.
but you, huh?
Is Malcolm X, is he considered a good person in America? Like, how do people see him?
Depends on who you ask. I think he was a great person, but there are some people who think that he was a militant and he was divisive. It's a matter of perspective. And one thing to note about Malcolm X, this is widely documented, that when he went on his pilgrimage to Mecca and returned to the United States, he had a different perspective on race issues. um, he was willing then to sit down with someone like Martin Luther King, who believed in nonviolence, even though he subscribed to a by any means necessary type of methodology, a more um, a more direct approach to dealing with racism. But his religious background and his pilgrimage to Mecca as a Muslim changed his perspective on relations in the United States. And so I think he was a great man. I think that there have been a lot of leaders who fought for civil rights that were misunderstood in some cases, but in some cases they were just villainized because they were trying to bring about equality and justice for all people, for all American citizens.
Yeah, I've listened to some of his speeches on YouTube. I mean, this guy had
Yeah.
great things to say.
Well, so
And-
some of your current influences and role models, you'd probably Muhammad Ali would be one as well.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali definitely was a role model for the stance that he took during Vietnam. Thought that was important. He was willing to forego his title of heavyweight champ and
Yeah,
um,
that's right. Yeah,
to fight for
that's
civil
right.
rights.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But I would say, my biggest influence has always been Martin Luther King Jr. I like the approach. Now, let me tell you that over the years, I have developed somewhat of a harder skin when it comes to race relations because I've seen the good side and the bad side of it. Um, and there are some people it's just you can't get racism out of them.
Mm.
They just don't like someone because of the color of their skin. And a lot of times I feel like this is not a popular thing to say, but I feel like during the time of the Jim Crow laws in the United States and segregation
Yeah.
and the really oppressive time, that if there would have been a more direct approach and not a nonviolent approach, we probably could have ended it a lot sooner.
Is it
Um,
enough?
but
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Because in Australia, if you racially abuse someone, if you're, being racist towards someone, it's an offense. Actually, you can be charged for it.
Racially vilified in sport. It's very big here in sport.
Do you have the same laws in America? Like, is it an offense to be racially abusive to someone?
Yeah, the laws exist, but it's always the interpretation of the laws and the implementation of those laws that are questionable. So if you have a system that is steeped in racism, it's going to be very difficult for that system to be equitable and equal for all people. So what I'm saying to you is that if there's a justice system that is born out of a racist past, then the laws and the implementation of those laws are going to be skewed by racist viewpoints. And so the system is only as good as those who implement it and interpret it.
The
And so we
leaders.
have to fight, I have to fight, we have to fight for the systems to become equitable for all people.
Look, we know you've built up this little hard exterior because you're a big man. We call you the big Texan, but let me tell you this. So are we white? What are we, Hispanic?
Man, I'm whiter than you, and
Anyway,
I'm Arab.
Yeah, I know that you've created a big exterior, but you've made two friends today.
Yeah.
You got an Afghan, and an Aussie Italian.
Aussie Italian.
And you've made some good friends.
I'm Afghan Australian, man. What are you talking about?
My best friend, my best friend is actually Sri Lankan. So
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Sri Lanka, yeah.
Yeah, so we talk about this quite a bit. Very smart man.
He does get racist, but he covers it with a joke. So
we're trying to soften Lavelle here. We're trying to soften him.
Just make it around.
Just one more question about about the racism. So this is a little bit more personal, but in the street or community that you live in, look, I've seen your stuff online, and you've got a lot of like community people within your shows. But in your street, is it all? Because we don't know. Is it all kind of mixed, or are you in an area that's all like just your community people? Like, is it
So
all?
where I live now, it's pretty mixed.
Okay.
Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the United States, and I live in a suburb of Houston. So there's, you can walk down the street and you see every race possible, which I think is good. I think that, you learn to appreciate cultural differences when you engage people from different cultures. So I think that's necessary and that's good. A lot of times we stay in our little circle, in our little community, and we don't allow ourselves to get to know other people.
Okay. I think, and I think what's a big, just going on what you said there, because I'm painting a picture now, because in Texas there's a big Christian community too. So if you're all Christian, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. It's all about what you believe.
No, so, if you're a person, if you're a human being, it shouldn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I can see a connection there. I can see it. It's making sense to me now.
Because let me tell you this too. When there were lynchings taking place in the United States, when Black people were being hung on trees and sold as property, these were being done by people who considered themselves Christians. They had a Bible in one hand and a whip or a gun in the other hand.
Oh.
And so, that in itself makes for a whole different kind of discussion, because
when was that?
400 years ago.
Oh, so that was a long time ago, was it?
No, not 400 years ago. There were people being hung in the United States in the 50s and 60s.
I should do some more research. See, that's what I said about. See, I've got to learn a little bit more.
And no one was prosecuted for doing such atrocities, or like for
very far and few in between, because again, the communities where these lynchings were taking place were run by people who were predominantly Caucasian or white, and they felt what was being done was so. If you go before a jury in the United States, it's supposed to be a jury of your peers. But during that time, there were no Blacks or African Americans on any of those juries. So it was a 100% Caucasian jury who saw that a police officer shot some black guy because he was walking down the street, and
Mm.
so the officer gets off with no punishment because of the peer of his jury of his peers. So that's again what I was saying earlier, that we've got to fight for systematic
Racism.
change.
So what you're saying is that these white people were saying, we don't want you to be Christian because you're black. That's what this.
That's a whole different. There's a lot that goes into that. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is that colonizers who colonized different areas of the world, brought Christianity with them into those colonies and forced people of African descent to follow the Christian faith, but only to follow it in a way that benefited those colonizers, and making them leave the religion of their homeland to adopt Christianity. So now, while I believe that Christianity has tenets and principles that are life saving and life changing and definitely should be followed, I think that Christianity has been abused and perverted in the past.
Wow.
Just
This is
like the Muslim faith, if you follow the
Right.
Quran, you're going to be a good person. But there
That's
are
right.
those who've taken the Quran and have used it in an improper way, and they've killed in the name of Allah,
That's right.
and they've killed in the name of Adonai, and they've killed in the name of Yahweh.
That's
So
right.
any religion can be abused and has been abused.
And they misinterpret these books. Obviously, for example, hijab. Hijab. Like a Muslim woman has to cover. Even hijab is too extreme by for example, Taliban's interpretation of the Quran. You have to cover everything, but in Quran it doesn't actually say. It says that you have to wear decent clothes, and what is apparent is apparent. For example, your face. You don't have to cover your face as long as you wear modest clothes. But obviously, the interpretation of hijab is very different in Saudi Arabia or in Afghanistan currently,
Yeah.
and in a few other Islamic countries. I mean, but then look at other Islamic countries. They have different approach,
Different
rules, and yeah, very modest.
This is very
approach.
very powerful stuff. And again, we've got Lavelle here from Texas. We're chatting here, and we're coming to the end of our podcast. This has been very powerful. You haven't got any more questions, have you?
I do have one more question. No, I don't know. Lavelle, do you have time?
I have time. Yes, sir.
Lavelle, I was going to ask you about your Second Amendment.
Okay.
So now, about how do you feel about these gun laws? Do you think that after these gun laws, they've taken a lot of lives? I mean, like guns, basically, all in general. Are you in favor of it, or are you against it, or are you, do you stand somewhere in the middle? I mean, because we see all these mass shootings every day, and we hear it on the news. What's going on with that?
From my perspective, I think that no civilian should have the right to own a fully automatic weapon. Period. That should be reserved for military use only.
Or any
There's
gun.
no there's
No,
no
you can have a gun. Yeah,
there's no rationale for a civilian to carry a fully automatic weapon.
that's right.
Well, in Australia, I think it was the late 80s, Bob Hawke. Was it Bob Hawke?
I keep a baseball bat under my
He
bed.
basically said that no guns. So everyone, I remember my dad had a gun under his bed. No, never had bullets because if someone broke in, right? So everyone had to give their guns to the government. But yeah, as Rashid was saying. So when you're talking about fully automatic, are you talking about people can still have like a rifle, but they just
can
can't have one that
anything.
goes boom, 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 boom? Is that what you're saying?
I feel that people should have the right to carry a firearm. They should go through an extensive background check. They should be psychologically sound to carry a weapon, but you should have a right to defend yourself, your property, and your family.
Laws are
Where
different,
I think,
obviously.
where I draw the line is that with a fully automatic weapon, there's no reason to have that. I mean, you don't need to shoot 100 rounds at one time at anything or anyone. So a revolver or a semi-automatic weapon or a rifle you can use for protection. Now, we're never going to get rid of bad people. As long as we are on this planet, there's always going to be bad people. And we want people to have their rights. Everyone should have their inalienable rights, no matter what country you live in. But we should not be in a position where we empower people to commit mass murders.
Here in Australia, if someone
That's
breaks
my
into
2
your
cents.
yeah. Oh, thanks, Lavelle. I really appreciate for That's exactly what I mean. Like, you can have a gun in America. Obviously, laws are different.
You can buy them on the corner.
Yeah,
you can
you
buy
should
guns.
be able to defend yourself. But in Australia, it's different. You know, if someone breaks into your house, you're not allowed to bash them. You're not allowed to do anything. You just let them rob you.
No, I'll tell you what
That's
you
it.
do. Tell you what you do.
And
No,
you get your insurance company to pay for it.
I'll tell you what you do. You get a baseball bat. You bring him in the middle of the street. Don't go for the head, because if you go for the head, this is what I'll do. Go for the legs,
Yeah,
right? And then just leave him in the street, then ring the police and say there's a guy in the middle of the street crying. Can you come?
No, I do keep a baseball bat under my bed. I'm like,
do?
Yeah, legit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, if someone breaks into my house and if I feel threatened and if I feel that my family's lives are threatened, then, mate, all bets are off.
And you come from Afghanistan.
Mate, that's the Afghan in me wakes up.
Well, if this were my podcast and I were asking the questions, I would be turning the tables now and talking about the Aboriginals. But we'll save that for another time.
Yeah. Hey,
Look,
talk about indigenous community in Australia. He was going to talk about. He forgot about.
No,
it.
look.
Go for it.
I mean, we want to keep the show around. Maybe we can do a follow up because we can talk for another half an hour on Indigenous Australia.
No, actually, we should have another podcast with Lavelle.
Yes.
We need to talk about this because, with Indigenous population in Australia, and obviously, it's an issue still to this day.
It is. Look, well, that's for viewers to come in the future. So, look, let's wrap this up. Let's talk. Let's look. We are so happy that we met Lavelle Lemonier. He has had a very interesting story to tell. His insights and his podcast that he's put together, and the way he just delivers things, and his wealth of knowledge just through experience, being 56 years young, but we won't tell anyone. But just that insight, and it's been fantastic. I think that once we put this podcast together and send it to you, I think your viewers will get a little, it shows a little bit of, we appreciate the vulnerability that you've shared with us, that we can share with other people, and just letting people in, letting people into our lives and just giving an insight, because we live in a really crazy world at the moment where, people are so heavily into devices and being distracted. So, like, we appreciate the value that you've shared with us, because there is a lot of value in just what you've said. A lot of life lessons if people just want to listen.
Just to talk about these issues.
Oh, there's so many themes. We've only touched on a few. We think that we've made a friend overseas. That
Lavelle.
We
Nice
thought
to
we'd
meet you, mate.
And
officially,
we're going to keep in touch. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the likes. Rashid, you want to say anything?
Well, now
before we're headed over,
Lavelle, thank you very much for accepting our podcast. Obviously, we're at the very
start of our journey.
The start of our journey. Thanks. And well, it was great chatting with you, and hopefully we'll have another podcast, and we'll talk about different subjects, and hopefully we'll have different issues that we can discuss.
Over to Lavelle.
Sounds good. I appreciate you guys having me on. I really enjoyed the discussion with you. I hope that your viewers continue to tune into your podcast, and that you guys develop and just have fun doing what you're doing. Spread information, have fun doing it. And I think people will stay tuned in. But I appreciate it. You've got a fan and a friend here in the States, and I'm glad to have met both of you.
Oh, we're very humbled by that. And for our viewers, all Lavelle's links are going to be in our description. All his new movies coming up, all his links to his podcasts and anything associated with Lavelle Lemonier. I don't want to go. I got to go.
Mate, that name is...
Mate.
Every time Lavelle Lemonier.
You'd never hear anyone called Lavelle. I'd never heard anyone called Lavelle.
Never.